thought it would be a great idea for us to talk a little bit about feedback so we can get comfortable as an organization receiving and also giving feedback. So today's lesson is more feedback, please, how positive and corrective feedback drives performance. So why is feedback so important? Well, number one, it improves your confidence, right? So you're assured that the job that you're doing well. It motivates continuous learning, right? So we're trying to be lifelong learners and continue to learn. About 65% of you want feedback on a consistent basis so you know how well you're doing. And then, of course, you got to think about the transfer of knowledge. Like an organization, it's really like an organism. How do you transfer that knowledge into new people stepping into new roles, right? So we do that through feedback, right? So let's go ahead and let's get started. Oh,
Please, sir, I want some more.
no, I guess he was shocked. I wish more of us would ask for more feedback. So another reason is why is it so important to ask for feedback, right? So it shows that you're committed to improving and contributing to the overall mission and vision of Children's Bureau, right? So we all want to get better at what we're doing. And plus we're going through a time where we need to start thinking about upskilling, right? So what are some of those skills that we need in the future? It provokes change and it fuels growth. It gives you an opportunity to look at things from a different perspective. A lot of times we'll see or we'll look at our own performance, but we don't see how we show up to other people. So it's important for us to understand that. You get to see the impact that you have on your team goals and organizational goals. And then it gives you a sense of purpose. It creates value in what you do. It defines the meaning of what you do. And it gets you to show up every day, right? To be your best and your better self. So our learning objectives for these two sessions. In our first session, we're going to be talking about developing comfort in asking for feedback. There's this thing called pull feedback. Pull feedback is when you're asking for it. Push feedback is when it's given to you. And sometimes push feedback is given a little late. So it's best for you to ask for pull feedback. We're going to identify development blind spots. What are those areas that I don't see? Right? People that are around me that will be able to observe, my peer, my supervisor, my manager. And then we're going to create a growth mindset. We don't want to be fixed minded. We want to have a mindset that we can continuously grow and continuously learn. And then, of course, receive and give effective and unbiased feedback. How do we do that? Well, first, let's watch this quick video by author Sheila Heen, and she's going to talk about the importance of happiness and feedback. Let's take a look.
If you look at the neuroscience, the way that we're wired has a profound effect on how we hear and respond to feedback. Now, we took a look at 3 variables that are particularly important in terms of your reaction to feedback. The first is your baseline. In the literature, this is called set point sometimes. It's sort of how happy or unhappy are you in the absence of other events in your life. Where's that level that you come back to? If it's a scale of 1 to 10, some people just live their lives at 9, right? They're just so unbelievably happy and cheerful about everything. Like from a cup of coffee to a promotion, they're just thrilled. This research comes from looking at lottery winners. A year later, they're about as happy or unhappy as they were before they won the lottery. And people who go to jail, a year later, they're about as happy or unhappy as before they went to jail. Now, the reason this matters for feedback is particularly if you have a low set point or baseline, positive feedback can be muffled for you. The volume is turned down. It's harder for you to hear it. Now we look at the second variable, which is swing. When you get positive or negative feedback, how far off your baseline does it knock you? The same piece of feedback can be devastating for one person and, kind of annoying for another. And then the third variable is how long does it take you to come back to your baseline? How long do you sustain positive feeling? Or how long does it take you to recover from negative feeling? So taken together, that's where the big variation in sensitivity comes from, that some people are extremely sensitive and other people are pretty insensitive. Or maybe I should say even keel. But I suppose if you're insensitive, you don't really care what I call you, so it doesn't matter. Here's why this is particularly important. There are 2 reasons. One is your own footprint or feedback profile not only influences how you receive feedback, it also influences how you give feedback. So if you're pretty even keel, it could be that you're more likely to be pretty direct, or other people would describe you as harsh in your feedback because you think like this isn't that big a deal and you're overreacting to it. Other people who are very sensitive are likely to tiptoe around issues And if they're talking to someone who's pretty even keel, like they're not even understanding that you're giving them feedback, right? Like you have to be pretty direct to even get through to them. The second reason it matters is that particularly if you swing negative, it can actually distort your sense of the feedback itself and your sense of yourself. So in terms of distorting your sense of the feedback itself, it's almost like it supersizes it. You know, one piece of feedback triggers sort of an overwhelming flood where the feedback itself overruns its borders. It's not one thing, it's everything. It's not now, it's forever. And you can fall into what we've called the Google bias. It's as if mentally and emotionally you Google everything that's wrong with me, and you get like 1.2 million hits, all your past mistakes, failed relationships, bad judgment. You know, there are sponsored ads from your father and your ex, and it's suddenly everything you can see about yourself. The challenge in the book is how do you dismantle the distortions so that you can see the feedback itself at actual size, and it doesn't become so big and overwhelming that you're actually not in a place to learn and you're not hearing the feedback for what it does represent and what it doesn't represent.
All right. So think about that happiness and feedback. So what's your baseline? That depends on what type of person you are. Are you naturally a happy person? When I think about someone who's kind of high on the baseline, they're like a 8 or a 9, right? They're super happy. So depending on what feedback they'll get, you know, it will determine how they swing off of their normal baseline. I can give you one good example. Let's say that you're about a 7 or an 8, right? You're pretty much generally a good person, and you get some excellent or really, really good feedbacks, right? So now you're feeling good about yourself, and you know that you're doing well. If your swing doesn't come back to your normal baseline, you stay so high, you're so focused on that positive feedback, you forget about your current performance. I had that happen to me once. I received some really, really good feedback, and I just floated on that for about 3 months. 3 months later, my performance actually dropped because my swing didn't come back to my baseline. So I want you to think about that for a second as you think about a recent feedback session. It could be something that happened present or something in the past, but I want you to write a couple of brief sentences about the situation of your feedback and what was the feedback that you received. We're not going to share these, so you're going to keep these to yourself, but just grab a piece of paper and a pen and write a couple of sentences about the situation of the feedback that you received. So when was the last time you received feedback? What was it like? What was it about? All right, I'll give you a couple of seconds to go ahead and take care of that. All right. And continue to write those down, right? So just think about your last feedback session, what happened, and what was the feedback about. All right. And as you do that, we're going to continue on and we're going to talk about the experience of feedback, right? So these are the topics that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the potential trap of feedback, right? And we're going to talk about your blind spots. What are those areas that I can't see? Who should I be asking for feedback? And then, of course, we're going to talk about perspective, the perspective of feedback. Who is that feedback coming from? But I want to ask you this one question. What are the 2 things these athletes have in common? I want you to take a look. I got Tom Brady here, Steph Curry. I see Serena Williams, Simone Biles, LeBron James. That's Michael Phelps over there in the corner. Michael Trout. I see Usain Bolt. Go into the chat for me and tell me what are the 2 things these athletes have in common? All right, kind of said desire to be better. Yeah, okay. Chris says that they're competitors. Absolutely. All of these people compete on a very, very high level, high performance. Thank you. Champions, dedications. Yeah, some of them are rivals. Definitely are rivals. Great skills and persistence. Martha said persistent. They're all celebrating. Yeah, they're all champions in their own right. Hardworking, competitive, professionals, persistence, experiences a lot of feedback from everyone in the world. Uh-oh, Marcia. What? Exactly. You got it right there, right? So they receive daily feedback, right? So these are two traits that two great athletes always share. The most successful athletes get feedback daily to see how they can become better, both professionally and personally. And they also have an appetite for learning, right? So whether it's training to run a bit faster or figuring out the best strategy to outsmart the competition, right? You said they were very competitive. Successful sports stars challenge themselves to learn new things daily. And that's why feedback is important, right? It helps you to continue to grow and continue to LeBron. Yeah, LeBron is the GOAT, definitely. Lakers. All right, I'm just going to throw that out there real quick. But yeah, definitely, right? So those are the things that all those champions have in common. So feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? We need feedback in order for us to grow and in order for us to do better, right? We got to get that input. So let's talk about some of the potential traps when it comes to feedback. Personal attacks. Now, often part of the reason we don't like to ask for feedback is when others suggest improvements, it feels like it's a criticism, right? It feels very personal. But on the flip side, giving feedback can be very tricky. Now, if you feel that you don't want to offend the other person, the key to feedback, however, is to remember that it's just a tool. It's not a personal attack on your character. So the feedback is for the person and not about the person. So remember that. And then push feedback. So waiting for push feedback. We talked about that a little bit in the beginning. For deep insight and growth to take place, we need to look openly at reality in all its pain and its glory. This makes us vulnerable. And we will only open up to this vulnerability if we feel secure that we will not be judged, that our value as a human being is not at stake. Now, any conversation where we be evaluated and ranked and where feedback is pushed on us is therefore very unlikely to be an amazing conversation, right? So shift from waiting for push feedback to pull feedback. I like to say, how am I doing this month in regards to accomplishing my goals, right? That's a simple question that you can ask. Lack of action. If you're actively seeking feedback, you risk falling into the potential trap, never quite reaching your potential because you're unclear on how to come across to others and what you can bring to improve. I want you to think about how you receive feedback from others. Is it a positive or is it a negative process for you? It may depend on your experience. Does it leave you feeling grateful or uncomfortable? And think about what you can do to make sure that you don't fall into the potential trap, right? So getting feedback and then just ignoring it, right? That could be dangerous too, right? There's some perspectives that we need to consider. So I want you to, oh my God, that was a crash. All right, you got to be able to unveil your blind spots, right? So do you know what your development blind spots are? You can know what your blind spots are because you can't know what your blind spots are because you can't really see them. Your blind spots are where you lack awareness about how others perceive you. So what are those areas that I need to develop in, right? What's the perception that I have when I step into a meeting, right? How is my work looked at? Now, the first step in identifying your blind spots is acknowledging that there'll be ways that you behave and the way that you complete your tasks and the way that you interact with others that won't always come across the way that you intend. Now, the only way that you can know how you come across to others and how you can improve your approach is to specific tasks is to understand other people's perspectives. So we need to be able to get other perspectives so we have a total view of how we perform at work, right? So perspective, all right, take a look at this. Sometimes we think we're a gentle giraffe, right? But actually, sometimes we might just be a raging elephant. We might need to hear that from somebody, right? We might be coming in the wrong way. So perspective and ego. Our ego is built to protect us and minimize discomfort. I want you to think about this. Have you ever been in a situation where you receive some negative feedback and your immediate reaction is to think that that feedback can't possibly be correct, right? They have to be wrong. The other person must have it wrong, or they don't really understand your situation. Maybe once the defensiveness or embarrassment fades and you later reflect on the situation, you realize that there may have been an element of truth in what the other person was saying, right? Sometimes with feedback, we got to let it sit with us for a little bit, right? We got to get it into our bodies, into our minds, and then be able to figure out, okay, what are some things and pieces that I could take away from this? Not all feedback you might be able to do something with, but you can take bits and pieces and look at areas where you can do a little bit better. All right. Now, you had a chance to kind of write down a description of what happened in your last feedback session and what the conversation was about. What I want you to do is right below where you wrote that, I want you to write the story of the event and the feedback, but I want you to take a completely negative perspective, right? I want you to be negative about the feedback that you receive and write about that. Oh, they have to be wrong when they told me this, right? Give you a couple of seconds to do that. So looking at that same situation, if you looked at it through a negative lens, how would you have taken it? All right. Okay. And as you work on that, I want you to take a look at this video about having a fixed mindset compared to a growth mindset. All right, let's take a look.
Researcher and professor Carol Dweck uses the term mindset to describe the way people think about ability and talent. Dweck delineates between two different mindsets that exist on a continuum. The first is the fixed mindset, which suggests that your abilities are innate and unchangeable. The second is a growth mindset, which views it as something you can improve through practice. In a fixed mindset, you view failure as permanent, but with a growth mindset, you see failure as a chance to learn and even pivot. Those with a fixed mindset are more likely to view critical feedback as a personal attack, while those with a growth mindset will see it as a chance to improve, where they can develop new systems. With a fixed mindset, you're more likely to choose easier tasks and put in minimal effort. After all, if talent is fixed, why bother improving? Why even try? But with a growth mindset, you're more likely to embrace challenging tasks and work hard to improve. Those with a fixed mindset are likely to give up when they face an obstacle. Meanwhile, those with a growth mindset will view obstacles as a chance to experiment and solve problems. In a fixed mindset, the focus is on measurable accomplishments. But with a growth mindset, the focus is more on a journey of continual improvement. With a fixed mindset, you're less likely to take creative risks. But with a growth mindset, creative risks are simply a way to innovate and improve. Ultimately, your mindset influences everything from creative risk-taking to how you view feedback to whether or not you finish difficult tasks. And in the end, it's one of the greatest factors in determining whether or not you grow and improve in your abilities.
All right. So keeping a growth mindset, right? Understanding, and we're going to come back to this activity in a second. So understanding that in order for you to develop and continue to excel, you need to develop a growth mindset. About a week or two ago, we sent out a series of videos on SMART goals. What is a SMART goal? How to create a SMART goal, and how you can apply a SMART goal to your performance review. So hopefully you had an opportunity to take a look at those very, very short videos that will help you get into that growth mindset. We'll make sure that we'll put the link of that in the chat. If you haven't had a chance to watch those, they're very short videos and they'll help you get prepared for your performance review and start thinking about what your goals will be for the remainder of this year. All right. So with fixed mindset, you think sometimes that you're only good at certain things, right? Right. You're a one-trick pony, but that's not true. Right? If you change to a growth mindset, you can be good at anything. All right. You can learn a new skill today. Right. I give up when it gets too hard. Having a fixed mindset, right? You just quit. But change it to a growth mindset. I'll try until I get the results that I want, or until I see incremental improvement, right? So we continue. You may not hit the big goal, but you can create smaller goals for yourself to get a lot better. I hate challenges. Well, those that are not challenged, never develop or grow into their potential. But if you have a growth mindset, you'll embrace challenges, trying something new, right? Volunteering for something that you may have been afraid to volunteer to do before, right? What are those gaps or things that my team needs right now? With a fixed mindset, you don't like doing what you don't know. Well, with a growth mindset, you like to learn about new things you don't know, right? And then bring that knowledge back to the organization to be able to use that. I love doing that. And what are some things, what are some skills that we're missing that we need someone to kind of develop and have? With a fixed mindset, I take feedback and criticism very personally. But remember, it's not about the person, right? But with a growth mindset, I welcome feedback and criticism. All right. So those are the important things that you need to know in order to change to a growth mindset. Now, if you accept that you're going to make mistakes, and you will at times receive feedback you may not want to hear or agree with, it puts you in the driving seat when it comes to creating a growth mindset, right? So taking that feedback and what are the positives and what can I take out of that? Evaluative feedback is a summary for the learner of how well he, she, or they have performed on a particular task. This feedback is often in the form of letter grades, numbers, check marks, symbols, or other general comments like excellent or needs help or good, right? You're a 3, you're a 2, right? That's evaluative feedback. But developmental feedback goes beyond simply telling an employee what they did well or what they did bad in. It focuses on areas of improvement. I like to call it feed forward. So instead of feedback, you get into a mindset of receiving feed forward. What are the things that I can improve on and do better in? Instead of focusing on what you failed in. All right, what can I do better in starting today? All right. So starting to get into that growth mindset and thinking about developmental feedback and feed forward. All right. Now, I want to set you up with something that you can walk away. What's an acronym that I could remember that'll be easy for me to understand when it comes to feedback? I want you to remember that feedback is a gift, right? It's something that is given to you from someone who wants to see you do better. So in order for you to get the benefits of the gift of feedback, I want you to consider the following. Is this feedback clear to me? Do you understand what's being told, right? Sometimes it needs to be broken down a little bit. It could be vague. You need some improvement in this area. Well, give me some specifics, right? Do I understand where it's coming from? Do I understand why it's important? Why is this feedback important to my performance? Do I understand the impact? How is this impacting my goals, team goals, my program goals, organizational goals? And if necessary, you want to ask the giver to provide more specifics on the details of the feedback, context of to why it's important. So when you give feedback, you should understand why it's important to your goals. And then, of course, the impact. All right. I'm going to walk you through a couple of these. Remember that feedback is a gift. It's given with permission. Its intent is for growth. It's for the person, not about the person. And it's targeted for success. I want you to think through a couple of these questions. Why might it be hard for me to receive this feedback? What can I learn from feedback that will help me? Go into chat. Why don't you let me know? Why might it be hard for us sometimes to receive feedback? And what can I learn from this feedback that will help me? Give me a couple ideas. Oh, how we were raised. Yeah. Yeah. How did I deal with feedback in the home? You might be viewed negative because you knew you didn't do your best. Yeah, sometimes, you know what? I'm told that all the time, Erica. I give myself the hardest feedback. So if it's one area improvement, I'm going to multiply it times 10. Oh, I'm horrible and all that stuff. But remember, you got to get out of that mindset. You get into that Google space where you start Googling everything. The author Sheila Hines talked about that, where you start Googling everything that's wrong with you. So you got to get out that mindset. Perfectionism. Yeah, I suffer from perfectionism, right? So just understand that I didn't do it as good as I thought I would. Right? Very good. Now, what else do I need to know to help me take action? Comparing yourself to others? Yeah, Drejine. Yeah. Etta said how we were raised, how the feedback was delivered, maybe delivered in a similar way. Can be seen as negative. It helps you improve and keep growing to learn, right? Yeah. Right. So it's all about performance, not about the person, right? You're a great person, but sometimes, you know, feedback is there to shape us, help us do a little bit better. All right. And then ask yourself these questions. What else do I need to know to help me take action? Or what support do I need or can I ask for? That's when your SMART goals come into play. You start thinking about what are the specific things I need? How am I going to measure it to make sure that I'm getting better? What am I going to do to obtain it? Is it training? Is it working with a peer? Working with my supervisor? Right? Is it relevant? Is it relevant to the team goals, the organizational goals, program goals? And is it time bound? Am I setting a time of measurement? 30 days, 60 days. When I look back, what period am I going to measure for that improvement? All right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. Mimi, if you could do me a huge favor, if you can go ahead and go into the chat and make sure that you post the link for our SMART Goals link. I want to make sure that our audience gets get a chance to take a look at those. Let me see, Etta, what'd you add there? There we go. But when we realize that it's about growth, we realize it was not personal. Yeah, that is why we should sit with it after receiving it. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. You got to let it sit and soak. There's feedback that I received years ago that I still mentally, when a situation comes up, I go back. I was like, yep, there it is right there. All right. All right. Thank you so much. So we have that new playlist for SMART Goals. Make sure that you take a look at that. All right. And then, of course, yeah, reach out to Mimi or Drejine if you have any difficulty getting into that link. All right. That went by pretty fast. All right. So let me go ahead and let me stop sharing my screen. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to make sure that we reserve 45 minutes so we just had time to get attendance and make sure that we got links. But that is your CBU, your way for the morning. That is feedback. More feedback, please. So be like Oliver Twist. Ask for more feedback so it'll help you with your improvement. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll do part 2 and we'll dive a little bit deeper. And Etta, you got it. We're going to talk about how do you make that feedback part of your metabolism. Let it sit with you for a while, right? Don't immediately react to it. Sit back and think about it for about a week and see how can I utilize what parts of this feedback I can use. Hey, CB, you've been awesome. I thank you for showing up today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You have an amazing day. Take care.